I like going deep. I like asking those deep questions. And a lot of that, I think, comes from being a hostage negotiator when I was in law enforcement. But I love those deep relationships, those connections with other human beings. I've been asked several times, how do you want to be remembered? I don't, and I won't be. 100 years from now, nobody's going to ever remember I was here. But what I want while I'm alive, what I want while I'm still here, is to have those deep relationships with people. And a lot of that is asking those how and what questions. How do you feel about that? What made you do that? And then, you obviously know I can talk your ear off, but I'm also very good at listening, not only to what's being said, but also to what's not being said.
Yeah, you definitely have that talent as well. And was that developed, or were you born with that?
No, that was definitely, I remember when I became a hostage negotiator, we were given a formula about how human beings communicate with each other. And the formula was 73855. So 7% of how we communicate a message with each other are the words that we use. And think how many times you've said something, or we're like, "Ooh, I wish I wouldn't have said that," or "I wish I would have said it a different way." That's only 7% of how that message gets communicated. 38% is the tone of voice that we use with that message. Are we down and sullen? Are we real excited? Are we somewhere in the middle? So 38% is the tone of voice. And then more than half, 55% of how that message comes across is our body language and our facial expressions. And we were given that formula because they wanted us to understand that if I was negotiating with somebody that was barricaded with a gun, I was not in the room with that person. I was a lot of times either on the outside of the door or sometimes several blocks away talking on the phone. So I didn't have the luxury of that 55%. I didn't have the luxury of, for example, negotiating with you, Edmund, and saying something and see you kind of roll your eyes like, "Oh, what an idiot. I can't believe he asked me that." So we had to get good at figuring things out, certainly based on what people were saying, but also what they weren't saying and how they were saying.
What did you do? What was your level of preparation to actually be able to absorb all that?
Yeah, I mean, we practiced a lot. We would do scenario based. There's all kinds of stuff in the news about different hostage scenarios, and we had a psychologist that worked with us. And where we learned was in the debrief. We would do okay, let's practice. You be the hostage taker, whatever the scenario was, and then afterwards it was the debrief. So the psychologist might say to you, "Did you ever think that person might have been schizophrenic and off their medicine?" "Oh, no, that never occurred to me." So that's how you learn this stuff. But a lot of times, we would get on scene, had no idea why we were there. What precipitated this? What made this person do that? So we used to start out with what we call tactical empathy. I think you can get rid of the word tactical and just talk about empathy. Edmund, help me to understand where you're coming from. Help me to understand what's going on here. And the important word there is understand, not agree. I mean, if you were a homicide suspect that just murdered 3 people, I wasn't going to say, "Oh, yeah, I totally understand why you did that." But I needed to understand, because understanding leads to trust, and trust leads me to a point where I can hopefully get you out safely. And one of the things two things that we used to do, we were always curious. So whatever you said, it would be, "Oh, you don't think you can do that?" So you would kind of have that, "You don't think you can do that?" And then the other thing is we used how and what questions. We stayed away from why questions, because why questions sound accusatory. "Well, Edmund, why did you wear that shirt today?" "Oh, wait a minute. Does he not like the shirt that I'm wearing today?" I can get to the same answer with something like, "Edmund, what made you decide to wear that today?" A little less intrusive, a little less, kind of in your face. So how and what questions were things that we used all the time. And we used a lot of silence because we don't like silence as human beings. We want to fill that silence. So if you would talk, I might parrot it back to you, almost exactly what you said, and then be quiet. Because we don't like silence. You'll start filling that silence. And I guess I'll end with this. The way we used to do this, how we described it, when we were growing up, we all would go to the park and play on the teeter-totter or the seesaw, whatever you called it. When we started negotiating with somebody, it was that exact same thing. Their emotional brain was way up in the air and their rational brain was way down on the ground. And over time, by asking those how and what questions and things like that, we would get to that teeter totter, hopefully, to an equilibrium where they would burn off a lot of that emotional energy. And then again, over more time, you would hopefully get to the point where their rational brain was up in the air and their emotional brain was down on the ground. And that's the time we're starting to talk about putting the gun down, letting the hostages go, coming out. When they're yelling and screaming and all hyped up, we're not talking about solutions. We're just letting them burn it off, trying to figure out why they're there and what's going on, and getting to a point where they've calmed down a little bit. And now we're dealing with a rational brain. And the last thing I'll say, and I think I said that before, the last thing I'll say is this: we never lied to people. People would say to us all the time, hey, I'll put the gun down and come out, but you're going to promise me I'm not going to go to jail. And we would have to say, I'm sorry, when you do come out, you are going to go to jail. And then we would try to deflect the conversation to something more palatable. And the reason we did that, and this happened several times, where whatever got them going, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, that event or that person was still around and pushing their buttons. And now 3 years later, we're back negotiating with this person again because it was their mother and they had a huge fight with their mother. And now they grabbed a gun and they're barricaded again. And if they ever felt that we lied to them, we had lost that trust. And so there was no way I was going to be able to negotiate with them if they felt I lied. You're going to have to bring in another negotiator and start the process all over again. So we didn't lie to people just because it was in our advantage. We didn't want to end up negotiating with them 2 years from now and have to bring in somebody new.
You know, what you just shared right there about not lying, and it's like you're being straightforward with them, and how at any point in time, even in the future, it's like you didn't know if you would still have to negotiate with them again. It's even if you did lie, it's like there is, just from working with people, it's almost like that. If somebody has lied in the past, it's like it's still like a part of you that kind of has that level of doubt as well.
Yeah, we don't trust people. You know, I mean, if you're going to lie to me, if we can't be honest with each other, it's just not worth lying to people in a negotiation, whether it's a business negotiation, whether it's a personal negotiation. I mean, think about the relationships you have in your life, you know, parent child, with your spouse or significant other, with your boss. If you ever felt those people were not honest with you, it wrecks that whole relationship. And I'm not smart enough to remember the lies that I tell. So it's just easier for me. I'm just going to tell you the truth. You may not like it, but it's just easier that way. And at least you can say, well, Terry was honest with me. I didn't like what he had to say, but okay, I know he didn't lie to me.